What's up everyone? So I've been meaning to make this video for a very long time now, and what I wanted to do was just sum up my feelings towards the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now it's been over a year since I did anything to do with Marvel on my channel, whether that was a review or just talking about the movies. The last thing I did was a review for Endgame, and that was over a year ago, and it's been over a year since we've had anything new from Marvel Studios, so it's given me some time to sort of sit back and reflect. Anyway, with 23 movies that have spanned over 11 years, Marvel Studios took an idea that to me didn't seem quite possible and made it into one of the most loved multi-billion-dollar franchises in the world. Growing up, comics were a big part of my life, especially Marvel comics, so seeing them being brought to life in this way was completely unexpected for me. Sure, we've always had the Batman and Superman movies, but those were always solo movies, and we'd never seen characters being brought together in the way that they had been with the MCU. What makes the MCU so much more special is the fact that they've taken some of their more lesser known characters to the general public, like the Guardians of the Galaxy, Ant-Man, Black Panther and Captain Marvel, and made them into household names. I mean, even I can admit that I didn't know a lot about some of the characters before they were brought to the MCU, and it made me go out and buy their comics and learn just a little bit more about them. Also, not to forget the fact that Iron Man himself wasn't a top tier character before the MCU rocketed him to the forefront of people's minds. We've been able to see these characters grow and develop over the years, getting full character arcs. Captain America, Iron Man and Thor being the ones to fully get this treatment, as they were able to be fleshed out in their own trilogies before being brought back together in the Avengers titles. And it feels like there's this rich history now, not just in the comics, but within this cinematic universe, and it's constantly growing and growing. It's always amazing for me to think of how it all started from that very first Iron Man movie to where it's come to today, with time travel, multiverses. Everything's just so over the top and crazy, as they've literally taken stories, characters and ideas from every corner of the Marvel universe and brought them into the movies. They truly are comics come to life, and for me there are so many moments, or so many scenes that just leave the biggest smile on my face, whether it was Ant-Man becoming Giant Man, Spider-Man finally joining the MCU, the Hulk versus the Hulkbuster, or even seeing Professor Hulk for the first time. It's something I never thought I would see, and there are so many moments like these, and they've all been great, and it's something that could not have been achieved without a lot of thought and care that has been put into these movies. But you know what, it's not all about me, and I reached out to some of you to find out what your thoughts were, what your favourite scenes or your favourite movies were in the MCU, and to find out just what you want to see from the MCU in the future. And this is what you had to say.
Hey, what's up everyone? It's Jason from the Wulong Talks podcast, and Dan asked me to talk a little bit about the MCU and what I like and what I'm looking forward to and my favourite movies. So here goes. My favourite MCU movie is probably Captain America Civil War. Why it's my favourite movie is probably because it is the movie that first introduced us to Black Panther. It's the first MCU movie to introduce us to Marvel's flagship hero, Spider-Man, and it handled both of those introductions in a tremendous way. It also built its characters superbly and built upon the story arcs of the characters involved superbly. One of the things it does is it manages to juggle multiple characters and yet still focus on Captain America and his journey, and also fit in Tony Stark's journey and the challenges that lay ahead for him. It is kind of like the seminal movie in the MCU for me. It's the one that shows that the MCU can be more than just a comic book movie. It shows that it can be a very personal and very emotional experience, and that sometimes in order to make a movie that has real stakes, you don't have to make the stakes bigger, you have to make them more personal. So that is probably the reason why I love Captain America Civil War more than any other film in the MCU. Not that I don't love them all, I love them all, don't get me wrong. The MCU for me, and I know I can speak on behalf of Rich as well, is something that just represents the reaching of I guess a childhood dream from the two of us. For as far back as we can remember, we always used to have conversations with each other about what live action Marvel comic movies would look like, what they would sound like, what the characters would be like, and we're now living the dream. We're now getting to see it played out on the big screen and in reality for us all, and it's just absolutely thrilling, really, really thrilling.
I don't have a favourite film in the MCU. There are definitely the films I appreciate more, just for what they are, the quality of them, like the quality of the writing, like Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, obviously, Iron Man 3, which is very underrated in my opinion. And then you've got the two major ones, Infinity War and Endgame. And I've been going back and forth for a while recently, trying to figure out which one I like the most. And I think I finally decided that Infinity War is the better one, in my opinion. I just think they do a really good job bringing all the characters together for the first time. It happens in Avengers and Civil War, but this is the moment that it's been building up to, and you've got so many characters to work with, and I think they just do that really well. But it's a result of taking the time to develop all these characters through the different films over the years, and really flesh out that universe. And I feel it just really pays off, and it meant that they could play with character dynamics without it feeling too forced or cringy. And it just meant that they could you're not really kind of focused on that. It doesn't distract from what's happening. They can just basically place the characters in any situation, and it wouldn't matter because you know who that character is and you're already invested in them.
My favourite film to date for the MCU has to be Black Panther. It just needs to be. The reason is outside of the massive cultural impact globally this film had. I mean, we're talking packed out cinemas. You could have been a Marvel geek, you could have been someone that's into superheroes. Even if you weren't into superheroes, everybody went to go see this film. We're talking from your parents to your grandparents to friends to your kids. It was just something which brought everyone together. You know, you saw globally everybody, you know, the Wakanda forever, and it was just so impactful. And it was just a film to me where even when they did the original phase of the Marvel, the MCU universe, it was one where I must admit, even when I was growing up, you know, Black Panther was not necessarily my favourite character, but the moment I saw that on the original timeline, I believe it was that and the Eternals, for whatever it was, it just absolutely gravitated to me. And just from top to bottom, from when you saw Chadwick Boseman, rest in peace, in the Civil War, to the actual film coming out, it was just, to me, there was absolutely no hiccups. I mean, we're talking T'Challa was just portrayed so well. I mean, even someone like Michael B. Jordan, where for me, I never considered him a villain of sorts. I always thought of him maybe as sort of the good guy character. And I didn't really have much hope for him after seeing him in Fantastic Four. And to be able to see him go and become Killmonger and do it so successfully, to me, it was just absolutely, hands down for me, the best film in the MCU. Just, it, you know, it gave me laughter, it gave me a good storyline. To me, it had me hooked. So for me, it's definitely the Black Panther. And not to mention, it was the first Marvel film to hit $1 billion. So what can you say about that? So yeah, Black Panther.
I love the MCU because of how it manages to build up its cosmic scale, bombastic action, jaw-dropping scenery with character development, team dynamics, comedy and heart. With how far it's willing to build up its extended universe, it's refreshing to see how much effort they're still willing to put into very human stories. My favourite scene in the MCU so far has to go to the opening for Infinity War, and this is for a few reasons. Up until this point, Thanos had only really been alluded to and seen in post-movie credit scenes. We hadn't really had any reason to fear him or think he's much of a threat. And secondly, the movies up to this point established some very concrete and very known conventions about the characters. Thor and the Hulk being incredibly strong and always the last man standing, no matter the odds. And Loki always being very cunning and always having a backup plan. This opening scene destroys all of those conventions and really establishes just how dangerous Thanos is and how much trouble the whole team is going to be in for the rest of the movie and its sequel.
Hey guys, Kevin here, aka Bufu, and today I'm here to talk about what one of my favourite moments of the MCU was, and for me it would have to be Spider-Man. I think that was the moment. It was like, because there were so many other Spider-Man movies and it just felt like it wouldn't make sense bringing him over. Like, you wanted it, but you'd think how would it work, and they made it work. And then from then it was just like, we could get anyone. We could get X-Men, Fantastic Four. It's like everything was believable at that point, that it could just all come together. So I think what I would like to look forward to the most is just seeing what that level can extend to, if you know what I mean. Just to see where it takes, because we've already done the Infinity Saga and that was crazy, so just to imagine what can top that is...
What would I like from the MCU in the future? I guess I want to see more kind of supernatural stuff. You know, one of the things that I liked as a Marvel comic book reader was a lot of supernatural characters. So I used to read a lot of Blade comics. I used to read a lot of the Midnight Suns comic books, particularly when the Midnight Suns characters came together. I used to love that. And I'd love to see a Midnight Suns MCU crossover event. I think that would just be mind-blowing. Yeah, I guess I'd like to see more of that. And obviously, of course, the one that everybody's waiting for, the X-Men, and the introduction of mutants. We're all keen to see how the MCU and Marvel are going to play that and how they're going to introduce these characters. And I think it could be really, really exciting. So yeah, that would be it from me.
What is my most favourite part of all time in any Marvel movie? There's so many. There's so many to choose from. I mean, you got the arrival of Black Panther in Civil War. You got Hulk smashing Loki, in the Battle of New York. Iron Man, I'm a big Iron Man fan, so I have to say my most favourite. Damn, I just remembered that piece as well. Thor Ragnarok, dope movie. It's got to be Thor's arrival in Infinity War, I'd say. Yeah, it's got to be that one. Lightning's all, and then you got Dr. Banner in there saying, "Oh, you guys are so screwed now." It's got to be that one scene for me. Got like the hair sticking up on the back of my neck and it gave me goosebumps because I knew that it was game over for the rest of them. So I'd say yeah, it's definitely Thor's arrival. Going forward, where I'd like to see the movies going, I'd have to say they got to bring back this guy, most definitely. In some way, shape or form, he's got to come make an entrance into the MCU. Obviously we've got Blade coming, which I'm excited about. Daredevil, I'd like to see him back. A lot of people didn't really like the Ben Affleck one, but they loved the Netflix series version, so it'd be good to see where they go with that character. But for me, one of my favourite Marvel movies is Black Panther. More so for the fact that as a kid I didn't really have a superhero that I could relate to. I was forever being told that I couldn't be Superman or Batman at the fancy dress parties because they weren't black. So for me, Black Panther on the big screen, that was something that touched me dearly. And I just love the movie, everything about it, the colours, the technology, everything, even down to the end part where they go into the UN and he's like, "Oh, we're going to share what we've got, Wakanda's here to help the rest of the world." And the man's like, "What can you do?" And it's like, "Rude boy, do you know where this brother's from? He's from Wakanda. You lot ain't even ready." You get me? That man has got vibranium galore. So yeah, I'd say it's got to be Black Panther going forward that I'm most keen to see.
I've spoken a lot about Black Panther in the past, whether it was to friends, colleagues, on video or social media, so I won't go into too much detail about it. But what that movie represented made it much more than just another comic book movie. It became a movement in cinema, and for everyone who's involved in that movie, they should be proud that they created a foundation that others can build on, and for what can be achieved not just in the movie industry but in all corners of industry. Obviously the sad news came this year that actor Chadwick Boseman passed away from his battle with cancer, and it came as a shock to many as it was something that he kept private, but there was a grieving that was felt the world over. Chadwick was a talented actor, and from the stories that people told, he was a genuine role model, and I feel like part of that he brought into his role as T'Challa. And if I was to think about one of my most memorable scenes from the MCU, one of them would be from the Black Panther movie, and it was right at the end where he and Shuri are standing in the basketball court, and one kid comes up to him and asks who he is, and he doesn't say anything. He doesn't need to say anything, he just smiles. But at this point the audience knows, we all know who he is, and that really struck a chord with me because I didn't have characters like this on the screen when I was growing up. So I knew that there would be kids watching this worldwide, and they would have something resonate within them. They would see this character and they would see themselves within him. And Chadwick will be missed, he will definitely be missed. But where do Marvel Studios go from here? How do they top the successes of 23 movies and the absolute crazy fan service that came at the end of the Infinity Saga? Not to forget the fact that one of their movies is now the highest grossing movie in the world. Well, what we do know is that after Disney bought Fox, the rights to the X-Men, Deadpool, Fantastic Four are now back with Marvel Studios. So the idea of mutants joining this universe, and that alone is a huge deal, with a lot of story potential. And that could be a way that they could up the ante with the MCU. Also, the idea of bringing TV and cinema together feels like single event comics being brought into one big event, and the movies could end up feeling even more epic than they did before because they'll have even more backstory and more character development put behind them. Obviously, WandaVision will be the first show on Disney Plus, which already looks amazing and has a great concept with the sort of mimicking the classic TV sitcoms. But then you've also got Falcon, Winter Soldier, Loki, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk, Moon Knight. There's just so many coming. And then you've also got the movies. You've got Black Widow, Eternal, Shang-Chi. The list goes on, and it really feels like Kevin Feige has said, there's no point in doing this if we don't go big, and that's exactly what they're doing. I've completely enjoyed what Marvel Studios have brought to the fans, and I'm more than excited to see what the future holds for the MCU. And I really hope that in, say, 10 years from now, we can all look back and say, this has been one incredible journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
To be young, gifted, and black, we all know what it's like to be told that there is not a place for you to be featured, yet you are young, gifted, and black. We know what it's like to be told to say there's not a screen for you to be featured on, a stage for you to be featured on. We know what it's like to be the tail and not the head. We know what it's like to be beneath and not above. And that is what we went to work with every day, because we knew not that we would be around during award season or that it would make $1 billion, but we knew that we had something special